My name is Elena Carter and I am 29 years old. That night, I learned just how invisible I truly was to the people who claimed to love me. The sound of screeching tires still haunts me, a shattering impact, then silence. My body folded into pain as the car spun off the road. I remember the blur of red lights, the cold metal biting into my skin, the taste of iron flooding my mouth. Then darkness. When I woke, I was in the hospital. The ceiling was pale, humming with fluorescent light. My chest felt like it had been cracked open and every breath clawed its way out. Tubes tethered me like fragile strings. The nurse whispered gently, "You're lucky to be alive." But luck felt like mockery. I turned to my phone, desperate for comfort, for family. And there it was, the family group chat, alive and loud. But not for me. Photos. Dozens of them. My brother wrapped in a robe, cucumber slices on his eyes, champagne raised at some spa retreat. Laughter, emojis, inside jokes about self-care. Not a single word about me. Not a single visit. I scrolled with trembling fingers, each swipe a knife. The silence of their absence pressed against me louder than the beeping monitors. Days stretched, empty and aching, with no footsteps down the hall, no familiar faces at my bedside. The loneliness burned hotter than the broken bones. 3 days later I was discharged. Still weak, still in the stiff hospital gown, I sat alone at home on the edge of my bed. My phone buzzed in my palm. The screen lit up. 74 missed calls. And then one message from my mother. "Call us back now. It's serious." I stared at it. My chest tightened. After all their silence, all their absence, now it was serious? I pressed call, my hands shaking. The dial tone echoed like a drum in my ears. I braced myself, heart pounding, knowing the next voice would decide everything. And when she finally answered, I realized their definition of serious was nothing I could have ever prepared for. I waited for my mother's voice on the other end, but there was only silence. A long, painful silence that stretched out between us like an empty hallway. "Mom?" I finally asked, my voice trembling with the weight of the unanswered question. "Elena, it's not." She paused and I could hear the shakiness in her breath. "It's about your father." My stomach lurched. My father had been distant for years. But serious? What could possibly be serious enough for her to say that now, after everything? "You need to come home," she said. "We've been trying to reach you." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Oh, not this." "Mom, what are you talking about?" I'm barely standing after the accident. I'm in pain. Just come, Elena. Please. You need to be here." She sounded frantic, desperate, like something had broken. I couldn't move. I couldn't feel my legs anymore. I wanted to scream, to shout about the neglect, the silence, the fact that not once, not even when my life hung in the balance, had they reached out. But instead I found myself agreeing. "Fine," I whispered, my heart aching. "I'll come." I hung up, my hand shaking. The coldness in the air seemed to press closer, as if the room itself had turned against me. I had been in a hospital bed, alone, forgotten. And now I was to return not to the comfort of family, but to face something that felt even worse than the crash itself. What was it? What was this serious thing they needed me for? I could feel it in my bones. It wasn't just about my father. No, there was something darker, something hidden beneath the surface. I pulled on my coat, the weight of the world pressing against my chest. I left my apartment, my footsteps echoing in the hall as I walked out into the night. The chill in the air mirrored the numbness I felt inside. The truth, it was about to crush me. But I had no idea how deep this betrayal ran. The drive felt like a dream, or maybe more like a nightmare. The kind where everything is distorted but you still feel every inch of the pain. My hands gripped the wheel, knuckles white, eyes fixed on the road ahead. It was as if I were driving toward my own doom, unable to turn away. The streets were empty, quiet, and the world outside my car seemed as numb as I felt. The hospital gown was still tucked underneath my jacket, a constant reminder of my body's fragile state, but it felt like a distant reality. The thing that burned now wasn't the physical pain. It was the uncertainty. What could my family have hidden from me? What could be so dire that they only reached out after days of silence? I pulled up to the house. It looked the same. The lights were dim, but still it felt foreign to me. I hadn't been here in so long, not since the last time I tried to be a part of their lives. I stepped out of the car, my legs unsteady, and walked up the porch steps. The door swung open before I could knock. My mother's face was tight, pale, like she'd been awake for days, eyes rimmed with red. Her usual warmth had been replaced with an icy tension. "Elena," she whispered, pulling me into a hug that felt distant. "Come inside. We need to talk." I followed her inside, the house colder than it had ever been. The smell of the place was all wrong, stale air and something else I couldn't place. We sat down at the kitchen table. The usual clink of cups and quiet conversations between family members felt absent. My mother exhaled a long, pained breath. "Your father," she began. He's gone." I froze. The words didn't make sense at first. Gone? But he had just been. Gone where? I demanded, my voice shaking. "What do you mean gone?" My mother's eyes flickered to the hallway, a dark look passing between her and my father's office door. And then I understood. It wasn't just about my father. It never was. I could feel the air in the room grow thicker, heavier, as if the walls themselves were closing in on me. My mother's eyes didn't meet mine. Instead, she stared at the table, her fingers nervously tracing the edge of her cup. I was starting to understand. Starting to feel the slow, creeping dread fill me from the inside out. My throat was dry, my hands trembling again, but this time it wasn't just the aftermath of the crash. This was something far worse. My mother looked up and the sadness in her eyes was too much. It wasn't the sorrow of losing my father, not really. It was something else, something deeper, something hidden. "Elena," she said softly, almost apologetically. "I didn't want to tell you this over the phone, but your father left us. Left everything to your brother." I blinked, the words not quite fitting together. "Left us? He's not. No, he's not dead, but he's gone." He cut me off. Her voice wavered. "He's left us for good this time." The air around me began to suffocate. A coldness spread through my chest. "Why didn't you tell me? Why keep me in the dark?" I asked, the anger bubbling inside of me like a volcano ready to erupt. "We didn't want you to worry. You were always too sensitive, Elena. We didn't want to burden you with our mess." Her voice was tight, defensive. She looked away again as though she couldn't bear to see the pain her words were causing. Burden me? They never once considered how I might feel, how I might carry the weight of their lies. I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "Burden me? I've been here, suffering in silence while you too." I stopped myself. My voice faltered, the years of silence finally catching up with me. She didn't answer. He didn't have to. I could already hear the rest of it in the silence. My brother, he'd already been handed everything. Everything I was supposed to have. And I was nothing more than a forgotten afterthought. I turned toward the hallway, toward the office door. I could feel my heart pounding in my ears. What had my father been hiding in there? What was left for me to find? I didn't wait for my mother to say anything else. I had heard enough. Too much, maybe. My hands were shaking as I crossed the room, each step heavier than the last. I moved toward the hallway, my eyes fixed on the closed door to my father's office. The door that had always been a boundary between his world and mine. The one I had never been allowed to enter. The house was suffocating. The quiet was deafening. Every corner seemed to hide a secret. Every shadow felt like a betrayal. The weight of my family's silence pressed down on me and I couldn't breathe. I reached the office door and hesitated. My fingers brushed against the cool wood. The familiar texture under my fingertips now felt alien. With one swift motion I twisted the handle and pushed it open. Inside it was as cold as I had expected. The room was a tomb of unfinished business. Papers scattered across the desk, old books stacked in disarray, and the sharp smell of leather and dust in the air. But something else lingered. A tension, an unsettling energy, like the room had been waiting for me to find it. I stepped inside, my breath shallow. My eyes scanned the room, but it was the desk that drew me in. There, among the scattered papers, was a single envelope. Its edges were worn like it had been handled many times before. I walked over to it, my pulse quickening. The letter had no name, no return address. Just a small, creased seal. I reached for it, my hands trembling, the anticipation building like a storm. As soon as I tore the envelope open, the truth spilled out in black and white. The papers inside were legal documents. My father's will. And there, at the very top, was the first line that hit me like a blow to the gut. "To my son Thomas Carter, I leave all assets, including the house, the business, and my full estate." I read it again, slower this time, but the words didn't change. My father had left everything to my brother. Everything. And there I was, forgotten. A ghost. I couldn't move. The letter fell from my hands, landing softly on the floor. But the devastation? That lingered in the air, suffocating me, drowning me in the weight of the lies. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in around me as I stared at the will, my father's words burning through me like acid. It didn't make sense. Why had he chosen Thomas over me? I stumbled back, almost knocking over a chair as I retreated from the desk. The truth felt like a weight pressing down on my chest, suffocating me. I thought about my father, the man who had always kept his distance, but I never imagined this. My fingers fumbled at my phone, my heart pounding in my ears. I needed to call him. Thomas. He had to know about this. We both did. But when I hit the call button, I hesitated.